He's a good friend. Yes.
You've done drugs with him?
Yes, I have.
Cocaine, right?
Cocaine, yes.
Alcohol?
Alcohol, yes.
Pills, including Xanax and Adderall, right?
That I'm not so sure of.
Okay.
Where's he gone?
Your Honor, may we approach? I just want to discuss one thing with you.
Now, Amber Heard's lawyer showed Depp's text messages and text exchanges between himself and actor Paul Bettany, including one which the friends joked about killing Heard. Now, Brittany is expected to testify on behalf of Johnny Depp. Now, he starred in movies with Depp, including the 2019 film The Tourist. Bettany has been vocal about his support for Depp. Court TV legal correspondent Joylim Nakran takes a look at the Depp and Bettany relationship. Take a look.
Checking in?
Yeah, we're checking in.
I suspect I may need to redecorate.
It was here on the big screen in Mordecai that millions of fans recalled Johnny Depp's performance alongside British actor Paul Bettany. But now the pair is making headlines for a very different reason. Bettany is set to testify in Johnny Depp's defamation case against Amber Heard.
All right, grab him.
Bettany and Depp first worked together here on the set of the 2010 film The Tourist. Years later, in 2013, the pair exchanged some striking text messages expected to be introduced in court. Amber Heard's legal team is pointing to the messages in their $100 million countersuit, claiming Depp wanted to ruin Heard. Court documents reveal part of the disturbing exchange months before the couple's 2014 engagement, as the couple had been in a heated feud. Depp writes, "Let's burn Amber." Bettany replies, "Having thought it through, I don't think we should burn Amber. She's delightful company and easy on the eye. Plus, I'm not sure she's a witch. We could, of course, try the English course of action in these predicaments. We do a drowning test. Thoughts?" Depp responds, "Let's drown her before we burn her. I will expletive her burnt corpse afterwards to make sure she's dead." Bettany replies, "My thoughts entirely. Let's be certain before we pronounce her a witch." These scandalous messages were read in court in the UK libel case, which Depp lost against Heard, along with several other exchanges showing Depp and Bettany's shared interest in drugs. Bettany is not a witness for Heard. He's one of 36 possible witnesses Depp's attorneys have called or plan to call as they sue Heard for some $50 million.
All right, still with me, criminal defense attorney David Bruno and former Department of Justice senior attorney Tammy Allison. And David, let me start with you. You know, I think all of us would sort of be a little bit worried if somebody was going to dig into our phones and start checking out texts that we made with friends. And I wrote in big letters throughout the day, context. You know, context is important. The relationship and the experiences you have with friends may have something to do with the types of things that you're willing to say with them that you really don't want the world to see. We all forget that text can be seen by everyone at some point if they really want to see them. But your thoughts on that, this idea that they're going in, they're looking at texts between friends and want them to say something about Depp to this jury?
This is a defamation case, and he's the plaintiff. He brought this action. And this is what you open yourself up to when you allege that your reputation has been damaged by untrue statements, and that is what this case is about. And now it's Heard and the defense team to show the truth behind what she said in the op-ed. And unfortunately for Mr. Depp, he has all of these communications. At times, he's under the influence. Clearly, he has a drug issue. And I would imagine that a lot of the communications that he writes, subject to what he's being cross-examined now, were not in a sober mindset. So he opened himself up to it with the plaintiff's case. And unfortunately for him and many others like him, it opens you up to these types of attacks.
Yes, it does. And Tammy, I want to give you a chance to answer a question that quite a few folks online had posed. part of what we were hearing about his relationship with Paul Bettany and Marilyn Manson, for instance, had to do with the fact that they did a lot of drugs together. So a lot of people online were asking, I thought this case was about abusing Amber, not drugs and alcohol. And so I want you to answer that question. Why is the defense making such a big deal about all the alcohol and drug abuse by Johnny Depp?
I think the defense is making a big deal about it because the plaintiff, Johnny Depp, and his team made a big deal about it. Let's not remember, we started hearing the testimony of Johnny Depp talking about his use of drugs and alcohol. That is what we heard. We heard from his doctor's friends, the nurses about his use of drugs and alcohol in his defamation case against her, as if that was going to minimize any of these bad acts that have come out. But in fact, what it has done is only made it worse. The fact that he's acting like this and treating her in such a violent way that we've seen on the video, but also casually talking about killing her with his other friend, who is also an actor, is gross whenever you combine it with the fact that they are both indulging in drugs and alcohol. That only makes it even more likely that these things that some people are taking lightly could actually happen if they're under the influence.
Yeah, and gross is the right word. I mean, it's just really gross. And finally, Dave, quickly, talk about the advantage it is for actually both parties really to have had a previous case where they basically know what everyone's going to say.
Yeah, but real quick on the drug and alcohol abuse, look, Amber did not look very good in the direct examination, the way that she acted in some occasions. And it's very clear right off the cross-examination that the attorney was going to show that Amber was not happy about the drug use, was not happy about the alcohol use, and almost explains how Amber was during some of the encounters. So I think there's relevance to that point there. As far as the prior case, look, then there's transcripts. Now, this is a civil case, so there's depositions. So the litigants have the opportunity to depose witnesses and get transcripts. But more than just the deposition, there was a prior case. All of those transcripts are available as well. And once you start testifying like Johnny Depp has here in the UK case, in the depositions, now this is his third time testifying at least. The attorneys get to cross-examine based on all those prior statements, looking for inconsistencies, and it just gives more firepower to cross-examination.
That's right. It just makes it a lot easier to undercut things that folks are saying. If you're just off by a little bit, they've got transcripts. They can impeach you, and that certainly doesn't look good in the eyes of the jury. All right, stand by, guys. We're going to take a break. Coming up next, we asked you, our viewers, what questions you had for Johnny Depp on cross-examination. We're going to hear comments right after the break. Keep it right here on Court TV.
3.
Thank you.
So I'll just stop talking.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to be
Certainly
respectful of the
not a
court's
problem,
time
Mr.
and the jury's time.
Sorry?
I just said I want to be respectful of the court's time and the jury's time, and I trust that you do too. So,
Well, I don't feel like I'm wasting anyone's time, sir.
could you pull up Exhibit 408, please?
It is time now for today's Talk Back segment. Usually we ask you the question, but today kind of switched it a little bit. We asked you, what questions do you have for Johnny Depp as he continues on his cross-examination? Put yourself in that courtroom. What would you ask him? Still with me, criminal defense attorney David Bruno and former Department of Justice senior attorney Tammy Allison. All right, guys, let's go to our first comment. And it comes from Lucy. She says, is this really about the money or is this about your reputation? If the answer is to clear your name and reputation, then why sue for $50 million instead of $1? Tammy, I'll start with you. It's a great question because I honestly feel like it really is for him about his reputation. He knew all this stuff was going to come out, but he just wanted to have his say, put it on the record here in the States, I think.
I think it's about his need to continue to abuse this woman. He's addicted to abusing her, and it's not about the money at all. He cannot physically touch her anymore, so he's going to keep messing with her in her head by these abusive litigation tactics.
David Bruno, your response to that?
I think it's both. I think it's reputation and the money. Certainly something has affected his ability to get new jobs. And honestly, if I were on the defense side, I'd be pointing to the drug abuse, to the imagery that's coming out in this case. I look at this, and I didn't know much about Johnny Depp before this case. I didn't follow him. I wasn't a big fan of his. And I'm learning more and more about him that I did not know. So while I think a lot of people knew about Johnny Depp, a lot of people are learning a lot about this case, and I don't know if it helps the reputation at all.
Yeah, I don't know if I could ever look at Captain Jack Sparrow the same again. And I mean that. I'm not just joking. Our next comment comes from Nola. Why did you stay in an abusive relationship for so long? That's what she would ask him. Why did you let her take such advantage of you? And it's at Johnny Depp Deserves Justice. So clearly it's a fan of Johnny Depp, Dave. But there are a lot of people out there who believe that this was an abusive relationship, but not on the part of Johnny, on the part of Amber.
Yeah, sure. Well, to answer the question directly and more generally, there's cycle of domestic violence. And there are true victims of domestic violence out there that don't seek help, that don't call the police, and that don't leave. And that is because when it's bad, it gets better. And there's the honeymoon stage and people feel comfortable. And then it's that cycle. It goes on and on and on. So if you are out there, you're following this, you're a victim of domestic violence, know that there's help and you don't need to stay in that situation.
Tammy, I'd love to get you to ring in on this as well.
The comment was about, why would Johnny stay? So whether he, in fact, was a victim or a survivor of domestic violence, he also, just like many people in this country, including myself, we talked about the fact that he's an A-list actor, his image, and what that would do to admit that you have suffered through something so horrendous. And as we see, when Amber spoke out, or even he spoke out, if people out there believe that he was, in fact, a victim of domestic violence, this is where we are. They're still suing each other. They're still fighting. It's still very abusive. It's still very toxic. And unfortunately, when you are in a position of power, it kind of tends to drag out like this. So yes, it is important to seek help and get away, but it is also important for others who are not in there to lean on and help other people that they know is going through it with words of encouragement and assistance as well.
I truly, truly appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much, because I hadn't been thinking about it quite in the way that you're talking about it. I really appreciate it. Our final comment comes from Diana. I think we'll just leave it here. She says she would ask him something actually relevant to the case. All right, so she's making a comment on the fact. We touched on it earlier. There's a lot of people who feel that a lot of these questions about his alcohol abuse, et cetera, are irrelevant. I think we touched on that. I want to thank David Bruno, Tammy Allison. Both of you guys were fantastic. Truly appreciate you joining me tonight. Hopefully you'll come back and join me again soon. Coming up next, guys, a special hour of Testimony of the Day, Depp versus Heard. To get you caught up on the day's biggest testimony from Depp on